Good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. This session is quite challenging because it basically addresses the issue of food security, converting it from a silos to innovation and partnership and collaboration. So we all know, as Your Excellency mentioned, that 1 in 9 people are still suffering from hunger. How to tackle the involvement of inclusiveness, smallholders, organizations like FAO, the private sector, for-profit, non-profit. It's all at the end of the day entails the food transformation system. So I'd like to start my question with Dr. Al-Hakim Al-Waer, if you allow me, although he's the head of my organization, but that's not in a biased way. Hakim, the title is Global Food Security Challenges, from silos to collaboration. And what are the biggest challenges that you can share with us in 3 minutes or so facing global food security today, and how can they be overcome?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Shukran, Kayan. 3 minutes for global food security. That's a challenge by itself. I try to simplify things, especially when we talk to people who may not necessarily understand the nitty-gritty technicalities of the food security issues and its connection to the other challenges as well, into putting it into some simple acronyms that people can remember and tag to easily. And I've came up with, as I was coming here to Dubai, I passed by Muscat. I was in Oman for some strategic think tank group for the national food security review. And I made it simple that would probably answer to your 3 minutes into 4 A pillars for food security that need to be achieved and kept in mind all the time, challenged by 4 Cs, and can be resolved by 4 Ts. And I got the ACT from the A's, C's, and T's. And the 4 A's that make any food security system are the accessibility, the availability, and Your Excellency Mariam just mentioned the importance of accessibility, availability, affordability. This is where the pricing control and the whole competition. And then an important aspect that we at FAO pay a lot of attention, and both Mariam and Yasmin were talking about it, the adequacy. And I call it the adequacy or adaptability, and that's where the Consumer Acts comes in. It's the nutrition element of it. So we need food that's adequate for the needs of the people, that's accessible, available and can be available, but also affordable. And those 4 A's make the pillars of any food security system. And they have to be there at all different aspects, and everyone has its own, at national level, strategies, its own systems. And we've seen from FAO that in countries you'll find that availability at local level is dealt with by the Agriculture Ministry, whereas accessibility is under the local supply chain and the Trade Ministry, and there's a lot of complications while we put the system in practice. The challenges that face and come against those 4 A's, the 4 C's, calamities, which is what we see. We've seen 2 already very soon back to back: the COVID-19 and the war in the Black Sea, and all the instabilities. Those are things that happen suddenly, besides the economic crisis. And then we have conflicts, and mainly protracted conflicts, which would remain always a challenge. Climate change. So that stands alone as 1 C of the 4 Cs. A very important C that both Minister Mariam and Minister Yasmin Fouad spoke to: consumer. And that's about the culture of how do we consume food today. And we cannot, I tell you from the figures we have, from the water that we have available, especially in our region, and the land, and the demand with the growing population, we will not be able to continue producing and consuming food the way we do today. And we have to stop somewhere. That stop will happen. And I've been just asked today by one of the journalists, said, do you think people will change their culture of changing the way they consume food? I said, they will have to, and they will do. It's a matter of, can we do it faster? Can we do it at less damage and less cost? Or shall we leave it to happen haphazardly so that it will happen later with major and a huge damage that we cannot recover from? One last point, and I always take it as an example, those who come from the here region, they know mansaf. Mansaf is a typical traditional food in Jordan and North Saudi Arabia, And it has always been, old people in Jordan told me this has always been based on barley, burghul. It's only the last 2 decades it changed to rice. Rice is not a commodity for this region. You need completely flooded water regions to be able to produce rice. I'm not saying rice is bad, but it came in because of economic circumstances that people found rice cheaper than barley, so they shifted to it. It's a model that, yes, we can shift our culture, we can shift the way we consume food and what we consume, and move to a different way of consuming less food. Last way is how do we get over this, the 4 T's, and I look at trade as one of them. To build trade, you need partnership. Yes, you are right, Mr. Mariam. You need to build good partnership, and it has to be built on ethical values. It's not about, I don't care, I only care about myself. I can do investment. I don't have to buy the commodities. I can go and rent lands somewhere where people do not have the facilities, invest there, and produce food there. But make sure that you don't leave more hungry people behind on those areas. So that is very important. Technology is another T that we need to focus on in a way. And then we see the trends that we have, territoriality, and those are areas that we need to focus more, especially on the trends, which is the culture change, the way we consume food. I'll stop here because I see your 3 minutes flashing.
Thank you, Dr. Hakim. Thank you for that input. That was really informative. It's very important that we keep in mind to secure the future of food security by fostering partnerships. So the second question goes to Frank, if I may, who is a board member of AGRA. What role, in your view, you see innovation and technology playing a role in increasing food security? It's very important that we hear from you on the focus side. Over to you.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background. AGRA is Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, has been set up in the context of the World Economic Forum. It's supported by Gates Foundation, Rockefeller, MasterCard. So it's a well-funded initiative to look in and to help smallholder farming in Africa. And it's increasingly also getting involved in food system transformation discussions. Because, of course, if one talks about food, you cannot avoid talking about Africa, because it must be everybody's business to make sure that hunger will not explode or come back in Africa. That's just a bad thing for the world. Secondly, of course, this is a huge continent with incredible agricultural potential. So if we continue to plow and cultivate with yields of 3 tons per hectare, whereas it could be done with 12 tons per hectare, that's not good for the planet. So simply put, almost every dollar that a nation invests in its own country, actually, if we would really think globally, we would invest it in Africa, because it would yield a higher return for the climate, whether it is building a new energy station or whether it is investing in agriculture. The incremental benefit for the globe, for worldwide, is just phenomenal. So that's one observation. Specifically on your question, the importance of partnership. Look, the history tells it all, that this is a challenge of such a magnitude that not even one well-meaning government can solve it, that not even one company can solve it, not one activist can solve it. It's of an incredible magnitude. And luckily what we do see is that the old debate about the private sector is bad and the not-for-profit is good, so all these silly debates have gone into the background. I think everybody now realizes that you need the private sector. You need civil society, you need governance, you need everybody. And what we see on the Africa continent, that this debate is gone, so now it's a matter of making it work. And it's hard work. I mean, there's partnerships around seed development, there's partnerships with Yara and Syngenta around fertilizer, and we as AGRA, we help to foster these partnerships, because the problem with partnership is you still need leadership. We like to think like we put 4 well-meaning parties together and something happens. Nothing happens. You still need leadership, and that is why one of the things that we cannot lose sight of is that we need government leadership. This is not a free pass. You can always come back to that point that we always come back, you need strong government leadership. On technology, look, let's be very clear, without the help of technology, we are not going to solve not even a fragment of the challenge in front of us. We need existing technology, because it's of course sad that so much of the existing technology hasn't been rolled over globally, whether it is on seed varieties, whether it's on mechanization, whether it's on storage technology. There's so much technology that hasn't even been rolled out. On top of that, Africa and poor countries have its own challenges. I think a large 500-ton pallet storage facility for vegetables is not really the solution. But a small solar-powered domestic storage room is the solution for post-harvest waste. Seed development, drought-resistant seeds, absolutely important. Fertilizer that allows us not to repeat the errors we made in the past in Europe and in developed countries, that we basically poisoned the soil, but new fertilizer regimes that allow Africa to not make the same mistakes. Digital offers huge opportunities, because whether we like it or not, smallholder farming, people who are farming 2-3 hectares, is there to stay. There is no realistic solution to wishing that problem away. It's smallholder farming, whether we like it or not. Digital offers a lot of solutions in terms of giving these people access to a digital marketplace, collating and consolidating and putting it into the market. So very, very simple. So if we could already roll out existing technology into places like Africa, that would already be a stepping stone in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I think the word that we're hearing here is that it's imperative that global collaboration plays a key role. We cannot do this alone. So we need to work cross-border, and we need to get to the root of the issue here. My next guest is a colleague of FAO, Dr. Tariq Al Ghorg, who is the CEO and Vice Chairman of Dubai Cares. Dr. Tariq, what you've heard so far, how can you give us some insight on what successful collaborations and partnerships exist today in your domain, and what can we learn from them? And also, what piece of advice would you give us to leaders, to policymakers, to the audience here at tackling food insecurity based on your own experience?
Thank you. Are we doing 1 or 2 rounds, or one, huh? So ألخص الكلام كله. أحسن شيء. Well, I'm always the black sheep in every session because I'm education, and what has education got to do with food security in the world? Well, it has to do everything, because without education, we will not be able to solve global issues. And we all know that everything that you have spoken, Doctor, about the food security issues are exactly the same issues that the health sector is facing, that the water sector is facing, that the education sector is facing. These are common issues. We are all facing the common issues. 75% of the global issues are intersectoral between every single sector as we work upon. And if we do not collaborate together, I agree with you 100%. If we do not collaborate together to identify these issues, to have a unified approach to these issues, to have a whole of society ecosystem approach in a cross-sectoral mentality, we will not be able to solve it. And why education? If we take the youth and we take the girls of the world, this is 75% of the population of the world. And if we can tackle those 2 segments and the climate issue, these 3, we're solving 90% of the world's problems. But we don't think that way. We all think in silos. We do not interlink things. And I agree with you again. This is not about the FAO. This is not about the WFP. This is not about AGRA or education or UNICEF. This is about a system approach. If we can put a system to the world and identify who are the players are there. It's you guys. It's us. And if we approach it in a unified approach to set the goal, to set the path, to ask our question, what is success to us? And we know the path, how to reach there, then everyone will do its own work and we will reach to that goal. If you're going to ask me one simple question about technology, I will tell you, and the WFP is working on it. The coupons. Coupons, they're giving coupons to people to go and take food. This is becoming an internal crime into these camps because that coupon is becoming a currency and they're trading that coupon for their own lives and their own nutrition, and they're not taking any food that whole day because it's becoming a currency. Digitize it. That's the solution. Waste. Are we monitoring food? How is it going? How is it dying to that shelf? Do we know how much food is going there and how much we're consuming and how much we're not using? Are we checking on the expiry dates on those shelves that you have mentioned as well? Are we doing all of this? Technology can help us. And we have to take this technology and have a unified approach to it. I'll just mention a few things about successful stories. You see, I had a dream. Now it's 11. It was 10 last year. I had a dream 11 years ago. And I did approach a lot of organizations in the world. And boy, my dream 11 years ago, it went into vain and it got buried under the ground and it never happened. Why? Because the sector was not ready for it. 1 year before Corona, I pushed my nose to meet this woman, Minister Maryam. And I said, you don't know me, but I have to meet with you because I have to share my ideas with you. And I sat with her, and that is when David Beasley got appointed the same year as the executive director of the WFP, and he had an idea to reignite the school meals initiative of the WFPs. She had a huge challenge. She just took on her mandate as a minister a couple of years or a few years earlier than that. I had my own mission of school feeding and homegrown school feeding, and that's what we did. We started working from 2019. Corona did not stop us with the WFP, bombarding her to join the idea that I have, and finally, through the Food Security Summit that happened during the lockdown virtually, the Food Security Summit incubated a global coalition called the School Meals Coalition under the WFP. I say we because the idea that I had 11 years ago came to life, and we've been advising the WFP for 3 years on how to put this coalition together. And thanks to many people, I don't want to mention their names because there were many people there. And finally, I convinced Minister Maryam to join the coalition. The UAE is a main member in that coalition. We have 76 member states and 83 global organizations. And what are we doing? We are trying to instill school feeding in schools. We're trying to get the farmers to have an inner circular economy, to take the vegetation to those schools through centralized kitchen, get the mothers being the caterers to those kitchens, and fortifying it through the Ministry of Health and having an cross-sectoral approach towards this coalition. I really I'm sending a big message here to take these, such as big innovations, how we can curate content on how we can take this into policy change. And to start with that, our first $4 million that went into the system, it went through the African Union with the WFP on this. Now, every single country in Africa is obliged to have a policy on school feeding, and we're funding the first pilot with the African Union and the WFP. I can talk more and more, but it is partnerships, it's collaboration, it's innovation. When we say technology, that doesn't mean it's digital. Technology can be anything. The pyramids of Egypt was a technology that there was no digital, and I apologize taking long.
Well done. Thank you for that. Round of applause. Let me just, before we go to the last question, which I'd like to ask all the three panelists, the World Government Summit this year, under the theme of Shaping Future Governments, brought leaders, global experts, key actors from around the globe to share and contribute to the development of tools, policies, and models that can really contribute to such thematic sessions. Later this year, the COP28 will be hosted in the UAE, and it will elevate the dialogue surrounding food systems transformation and spotlights food security in particular. So I think it's really key that we are here together to see the bridging between the international policy forum, and then you have entities like AGRA, and then of course Dubai Cares and Tariq's experience. The last question is, then it goes to all of us, which is the $64 million question that we ask. How can we ensure global food security initiatives make sure that they're inclusive? And as you rightly said, Tariq, and also Frank, how can we ensure that it reaches the most vulnerable? That is the key here. Dr. Hakim, I'll start with you, and please, I'm told,
Thank you.
3 minutes.
And this is quite an important issue on inclusivity. And I heard carefully Minister Yasmina talking about financial inclusion, and this is of inclusion for the small farmer holders. Maybe some of the numbers that would highlight the importance of food security, listening to our colleague from AGRA on the role of smallholder farmers. Today, we still have 70% of total global food produced by smallholder farmers, and they will continue there. And they are the main food producers globally. And we have to take care of what they do because they are the basis of our food supply. We also should know that 50% of total production of food depends on use of fertilizers. And this is the industry and the technologies that are involved in fertilizers and the attachment of fertilizer prices to oil prices and gas prices. So that is an area that we also need to keep an eye on using a technology. Now, what we do with the inclusion is that we need to have within our governance system, and I like the way Tariq described it, into having a clear system with clear roles for people. We have, as an example, at FAO, our policy generation governance system is based around what we call today the regional ministerial conferences that happen every 2 years. They feed their outcomes from the region. So the NERC, which is the Near East Regional Conference for the Ministers of Agriculture, they would sit there and pass all the directions, recommendations to the overall FAO conference. Prior we get to the ministerial conference, we have systematically on the governance system consultations and rounds of consultation with all the stakeholders. We start with the CSOs, and then we have a session dedicated for private sector, and all those discussions feed to the ministerial round of discussions before it goes to final setting up of our strategies and plans. So inclusion is a key role of talking to people. Now, when we bring those people to the table, prior to that, throughout the year, we actually talk to the farmers. We have a lot of feedback. Maybe one of the good examples that FAO implements, I'm very proud of, and Tariq, you will know about the farmer field schools. And the farmer field schools that FAO applies everywhere globally is the school that we're not teaching the farmers, we're learning from the farmers. Solutions are coming there, especially on the climate. I was at the north of Delta Egypt in Kafr Sheikh, talking to farmers that we established farmers school on the seawater intrusion and the change of the salinity of the water and soils and the loss of some of the crops and what they do to overcome that. And it was a huge, massive learning experience with the Minister of International Development from Canada that we learned just for that day of what farmers found that works and what not works. So consultations, but giving a platform for those group of stakeholders, especially those who are on the ground, to feedback their experience and then distill this experience to the policymakers so that it informs our programs and projects.
Thank you very much. Frank, you have 1 minute.
1 minute.
I'm getting signs.
Then I'll be very fast. Look, food system transformation that is not inclusive is almost a contradiction in terms. Rich people have no problem with expensive foods. Rich people will always have food security. Food security is by definition an issue that touches the poor masses. So the best way that we could, if we take all of us, if we take food systems transformation serious, that means we have the right objective. We don't let the project be hijacked by special interest it will automatically deliver. It will automatically be inclusive, because that's where the solution is. The solution is with smallholder farmers. The solution is in Africa and poor countries. Automatically. I like very much that example about school lunches. So important in Africa more than ever, for all those sorts of reasons. So I'm not too worried about it. Let's all be careful that the debate and the solutions will not be hijacked by special interests.
Thank you, Frank. Tarek, you have the last word.
What is inclusivity? You see, you have your own definition, and most of us, probably 50%, we overlap on that definition. But each country, each context has their own definition of inclusivity. We're talking about girls, we're talking children with special needs, elderly, ethnic minorities, but there are so many fragmented and out of the system. So we have to identify those country by country. And it's an easy job. All we need to do is unify ourselves. Our approach towards inclusivity, because time is short, is a very small task that we're doing. We signed with the COP28, and we were the first signature, actually, back in Davos 3 weeks ago. Dubai Cares has signed to be the exclusive partner with the COP28 on education. We're going to host the second edition of the Rewired Summit through the bracket of education and climate, green skills, green jobs towards green economies. Please join the summit. We're going to include everyone as we included them in the first summit. Minimum 25% of the 500 speakers, hopefully 500, that we will bring are youth, because they are the ones who will change all of these issues, and we will get at least 1/3 of the attendance, which will be in thousands of the youth.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. I've been reminded that I should close here. I want to thank the panelists. I am wasting time. I also want to say something. So, I just want to say one last word. I think it's very important that we use the word of Her Excellency, that no one should be left behind. That's also FAO's motto, by the way. I'm not here to plug FAO only, but it's important that we work together, and I see the momentum is very positive, so let's keep it going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.